Let's dive in. So today we're looking at how we can collect duration information. So, how long someone's spending on a slide, a quiz, a course with xAPI. So if you've been attending the previous sessions, you've probably heard me refer to this one as my favorite session. And the reason for that is because, as you know, in the last ones, we've kind of been measuring what people are doing, what they're clicking. We've been adding some descriptions to the activity, adding some URIs and technical details, quiz score information that's pretty basic. We can get that with SCORM. But now we're learning more about how users are interacting with the course. And by that, specifically, how long they're spending doing different things. So, we might see, oh yeah, they're clicking these resources, they're interacting with these slides. But if we see that people are only spending 1 second on each slide, if we're seeing that in a compliance training, suddenly people don't look so compliant. Right now we look at that test score in LRS and it's, oh, they got a 100%, they're compliant. But if the L&D team really wanted to dig deeper into that, we would measure duration and see how long people are actually spending in these things. If you went through the whole course in 30 seconds or 2 minutes, probably didn't absorb a whole lot. And similarly, this can really help shine some spotlights on user experience issues. If you have a pretty simple slide and you see that people are spending on average like 5 minutes on it or something, that could be a really good indication that something is wrong. So with that being said, this tutorial is a bit code heavy, but like the other ones, once you get the code set up once, you're going to be able to reuse it forever. So you need to just follow along. I'm going to explain some new coding concepts that I think will be useful to know. But some of it is going to be copied and pasted. And I should mention now, I do have a hard stop at the end of the hour. So we are going to have a quick pace with this one. So everyone open up the files you'll need. I'm going to dive in. Definitely feel free to stop me, drop a question in chat. But I'm not going to be pausing as much this time, I don't think, and we're just going to move right through this. So yeah, open up your storyline file you've been working on. If you haven't been here for the last ones and you just went through the tutorials, then just open up a storyline file you want to implement this with. It might be a bit behind, but just try your best. The recording will be available as soon as this is over. And open up your storyline file. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we will get started here. Okay, so we're going to start in the code. So open up that xAPI statement.javascript file. If you haven't been here for all of the weeks, you're not going to have all of these additional parameters here. Don't worry about these as long as you have these first 4. Those are the important ones. We're not going to be doing anything important with these next ones today. So let's just dive right into it. So everything we've added so far has been inside of this send statement function, but today we need to add some stuff outside of that function. So we're going to add some global variables. So go ahead and add a couple of line breaks at the top of your code. And we're going to create, like I said, some global variables. And the thing about these variables right here that we define with const and maybe at some places with the let keyword, these variables are only accessible within this function. But we're going to be adding some additional pieces to this file, and we want these other variables to be accessible throughout the whole entire file. So in all of the functions. So we're gonna just define these with the traditional var keyword, var. And what we want these variables to do is hold our seconds. So we're gonna create a course seconds variable and a slide seconds variable. You could add a semicolon after these if you want. You don't need to. But these numbers are what we're going to add to every time a second gets added to, every time a user spends another second in the course or on a given slide, we're going to add 1 to these variables. So these are going to be like our counters that keep track of exactly how long the user is spending on these different things. So we're going to start at 0. Obviously, when they get in there, they've spent 0 seconds. So we're going to have to increment that down the line. So nice and easy. Okay, sorry, Nicole. Yeah, try your best. We haven't done anything too crazy yet. We've just added these two variables, but so we've added course seconds and slide seconds. Now we're going to add some true, false variables. So I'm just bear with me. So we're gonna name the first one is course timer active. And the next one will be is slide timer active. And we're gonna make those both false by default. So the reason I set these up is because we want to be able to control these timers. Maybe we want to pause the course or slide timer based off of some user action. Maybe they open a resource and we want to pause the timer on the base layer or something. These true false variables are going to be what we use to control that. Whenever this variable is false, we don't want to add to this slide or course timer. And whenever this variable is true, we want to add 1 to these timers every second. Okay, is everyone with me on that? We haven't added the logic to do that yet, but we need these variables here. So that when we do add that logic, we have these variables to work from. Just to give you a quick hint, it's gonna be an if-then statement. So we're gonna say if the is course timer variable is true, then we're gonna add 1 to the course seconds variable every 1 second. Okay, everyone with me on that? So I'm trying to think about the best way to do this. There's 2 elements here. So let me just show you a really basic if statement. So it's going to be if true, then this will execute, and then if this isn't true, something else will execute. So for example, you don't have to write this. I'm just showing you a little demo here. So right here, we just added in true. This would actually be something else. This would be like if is course timer active is equal to true. Okay. So then it's going to check the value of this variable. It's going to see if that's equal to true. And then if it is, it's going to console.log this is true. And if it's false or not true, it's going to log this is false. Okay, so this is a really crash course on if-then statements. I'm gonna walk you through how to build it. But we're gonna dive into something else now, and it's called an interval. And this is a little bit confusing, at least it was for me in the beginning. There's this set interval method built into JavaScript, okay? So we're adding that set interval method to the window. And what this does, and the window is just like the browser window. So that's why we're doing this stuff outside of this function. We want to just add this to the entire browser window. That's how our timer is going to be functioning. So this method, which is it's just a function, the set interval function, it takes a function that it will execute every set number of milliseconds. Okay, so it takes 2 arguments, just like our send statement function takes all of these arguments. The set interval method takes a function that it's going to execute, and then you have to pass it a number of milliseconds so that it will repeat that function every set amount of time. Okay. So again, don't add this. We're gonna add something different here. There are a few ways to make functions. So you see here we made this named function send statement. We add all those parameters, and then we actually put our function between these curly brackets. Parameters go here. But we can also create anonymous functions. Okay. How we're going to create anonymous functions in today's tutorial is using modern JavaScript. So if you don't want to give your function a name, you just want that code to execute, you add an opening and closing parenthesis like this, an equal sign, and a little, what is this? A little, pointed bracket. What is this called? A little bracket like this, caret bracket. I don't know. And then you would add the opening and closing curly brackets. So this right here, I'm going to paste this in the chat. This is the format we're going to use for these anonymous functions. Okay. So let me show you an example of this. So I'm over here. I'm going to open up the console like we've done in the previous tutorials. Ignore this stuff up here. So let me show you an anonymous function. So it would be like this, boom. And then inside of this, we could just do console.log hello. I don't know why we would make an anonymous function like that. Let me show you it in context of this set interval method. So we're going to do window.setInterval. And now remember that first argument is a function. So that's where we're going to pass in this anonymous function. Okay. So this right here is a function. That's what we're passing in. That's our first argument. You know, you can pass a function to a function, which is what we're doing right now. So just like we can have an object as a child to an object, we're passing in this anonymous function as the first argument to this set interval method that's just made available by JavaScript. And remember, the second argument is the number of milliseconds that we want to wait before executing this code again. So if I did this correctly, then it's going to say hello every 1 second here in the console. So you see 2, 3. It's not repeating it because it doesn't want to clog my console, but that's just going to keep going every 1 second. So you can see how we're going to use this approach to add numbers to our seconds variables. Is everyone okay with this so far? I mean, I know it's like some new syntax and stuff. It probably looks confusing. It's just something you have to be familiar with. But cool. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Good. So let's see how this is actually going to look in practice now. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to copy this again. I'm going to get rid of this function placeholder. And now I have this bare bones anonymous function as the first argument. You will want this in your code because we're going to add to this. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add a line break after this first curly bracket so that it looks like we're just setting up a function like it does here. So we can actually add stuff between these curly brackets and execute it just like we would execute code in any other function. So this is where the if statement comes into play, because we know we want to add 1 to this course second and slide second variable every 1 second, but we only want to do that when these is course timer active and is slide timer active variables are set to true. So let's set up that if statement, that if statement that I was setting up earlier. So on this first line between these curly brackets, we're going to type in if, and then we're going to do if is course timer active is equal to true. And the way these equal signs work, we don't just use one equal sign, because in JavaScript, one equal sign is used when you want to set the value of something. So see, is course timer active? We're setting that equal to false. So we use one equal sign. We use two equal signs for like a more loose definition of equals. So let me show you really fast. So Devlin, if you wanted to see if Devlin is equal to Devlin, if you use two equal signs, it will resolve to true, because it's not case sensitive if you use two equal signs. If you use three equal signs, this will be false, because this wants to make sure it's like super equal. So in all senses. So for this to be equal, they would have to be the same case. So since we're using true or false variables, we're just going to use the maximum, the three highest way of determining equality. So if is course timer active is equal to true with three equal signs, and we're going to add more curly brackets here, because that's what you need to do in an if-then statement. So it's going to execute that code, and if it results in true, it's going to execute whatever is in between these new curly brackets. And sure enough, what we want to do is we want to add 1 to course seconds. And we're using the singular equal sign here. So we're saying take whatever course seconds is, right now it's 0, and then add it, and set that equal to whatever course seconds is right now, 0 plus 1. Okay, so every time this executes, it's going to add 1 to course seconds. And JavaScript is cool. There's actually a more concise way to put this. instead of having to type the variable name again and add a plus sign, you can just add the plus sign right before the equal sign. And that's equal to the same exact thing. This is saying take course seconds and add 1 to it, and set that equal to the new course seconds. Okay? Remember, speak up if you're getting left behind, or if this is too confusing. So we don't need to do an else statement right now, because we're not going to do anything if this isn't true. So if this isn't true, we're just going to do nothing. So we'll just leave it as an if. And then we'll set another one of these if is slide timer active is equal to true. Then new curly brackets, and we're going to do slide seconds plus equals 1. Okay, so we have a lot of nested stuff here. We have the window.setInterval, and then we're passing this entire function right here. So again, this right here is setting up the anonymous function. Inside of this function, we have 2 if statements, and these have some curly brackets too. So make sure those are started and ended where they need to be. And then the second if statement right here. And then we close the curly bracket for the anonymous function. We add a comma to pass the second argument. And this argument is how often we want this code to execute. We want it to execute every 1 second. So it's 1,000 milliseconds. Okay? If you understand that, then we're in good shape. Because we're gonna add a new piece to this code right here. We're gonna add a piece that lets us manage these timers. We're gonna add an object. So speak now if you're confused by what we did here or need to ask any clarifying questions. Okay, it looks like we are doing okay, or I've lost everyone. I'm not sure. Hopefully it's the first one. So let's go ahead, and we're going to add an object now. So just like we have our statement object down here, and we're using our key value pairs. So see, actor is the key, and then this object is the pair, is the value. And then within this object, we have key value pairs. Well, the values can also be functions. Okay, so let's get this set up. We're going to create this object. It's not going to change, so we can use the constant variable. We can set up a constant managed timer equals a function, just like our statement, or an object, sorry. Our managed timer variable is going to be set equal to this JSON object. And the first key we'll add is for the course. So we want to add some functions to manage this course timer. Okay. So we're also going to want to add multiple options. So we're going to want to be able to start the course timer, stop the course timer, and reset the course timer. Because maybe if in the storyline course someone presses the reset course button, we don't want this variable to keep going from what it was from the first course. We might want to reset that back down to 0. So we're going to add another object within here to add each of those multiple options. So we want to be able to start, stop, and reset. So let's go ahead and add those keys, and we're just going to leave just blank placeholders. So start, stop, I'm adding commas, and reset. Okay. So yeah, notice we have nothing here. We need to add functions here that will actually start the timer, stop the timer, and reset the timer. And we're going to do the same thing for the slide. So notice I'm going to add a comma after this course object. And we're going to add this slide object. And it's going to be the same thing. We're going to add a start, a stop, and a reset. We're alive. Nice. Cool. So with these placeholders here, we need to actually start adding the code. And once again, we're going to use anonymous functions. We don't need to use named functions here because we're going to access these functions just by typing in this code in storyline. Like for example, when we want to start our timer, we're going to do manage timer.course.start start. So we just want to be able to type this in an execute JavaScript trigger in storyline, and that's going to start our timer. If we want to reset our timer, we want to just type this in storyline. So you notice this is really easy to remember and use compared to having to rewrite any of this code. So you're not going to have to rewrite any of this. So to make this work, we're going to use some anonymous functions here. So to start our code, here, let's use this anonymous function format. So parentheses, equal sign, and this little bracket. Notice it looks like an arrow. That's the point of this syntax. So it's an equal sign in this little right angular bracket. And then these curly brackets. And now inside of these curly brackets, we put the code that we want to execute. So all we're going to do, we made this really easy for ourselves. Can anyone guess? Does anyone know what we're going to add in this function to make this course seconds variable start going up by 1 every second? Say it in the chat. You have 30 seconds to answer if anyone is feeling brave or understanding all of this. What are we going to do to make sure that we add 1 to the course timer variable every second? And your only hint is that it's very easy. 10 more seconds. Okay, all we need to do now. Yes, Will got it. All we need to do is set this variable right here to true because it's false. So right now, nothing is getting added to course seconds while that's false. So all we need to do is make it true. And now every second, 1 will get added to it. So inside these curly brackets, just do is course timer active equal to true. So notice we use 1 equal sign here. We're actually changing this variable with this code. So whenever we execute that little code example I showed you earlier, manage timer.course.start, it's going to execute that code right here and set that variable equal to true. And then once that's true, this is going to be getting added every 1 second. So I hope that's clicking for some of you. That's the logic we're running with here. Let's go ahead and copy that down. So between this, after this colon, but before this comma for stop, let's set up another anonymous function. And this time we're setting is course timer active equal to false. And the reset, okay, so I'll give everyone a second to do that. For the reset one, we're going to set up another anonymous function. So those parentheses, equal sign, angular bracket, that's what I'm going to call it. I'm sure it has a better name. And inside of the curly brackets for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to set course seconds equal to 0. Because again, it starts course seconds equal to 0. Whenever we reset this timer, we're just going to pop that variable right back to 0 where it was. So we just need to copy this down, do the same approach for the slide. So I'm going to set up these anonymous functions. And now I'm going to set is slide timer active equal to true. For the stop, is slide timer active, we're setting equal to false. And finally, for reset, we're going to set slide seconds equal to 0. So I'll try to copy and paste this entire object in the chat here. It looks like it didn't exceed the character limit. So this is the object we're using to manage our timer. It makes it super easy because we can use commands like this in Storyline to start, stop, and reset our timer. Okay? So this is good. We need to add a few more pieces here. So I'm sure all of you are probably, some of you may have wondered this. It's like, okay, well, we're setting up this timer. Where is this being held in the xAPI statement? So let's cover that now. So let's scroll down in our xAPI statement and look at this result object. You might, depending on how far you've gotten in the tutorials, you might not have this object at all. Yeah, Joe, that's a really good point. Any reset command would need to be followed by a start or stop command. unless you want the previously toggled state to continue. Yeah, Joe, that's right. Say you have a reset button in your course. When you press that reset button and it brings you to the first slide, all we're doing is setting slide seconds to 0. So it's going to bring you to the first slide, and then it's going to automatically start going 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you don't want that timer to start on the first slide immediately once they reset, you're going to need to couple it with a stop or start command. So you could stop the timer, reset the timer, and then when you're ready to start it again, start it. So we'll look at how we do that from Storyline. It's just an execute JavaScript trigger. But let's look at this result object. If you don't have this result object at all, you need to add it after the object. So after this closing bracket for the object, just add a comma, name this new object result. In the previous weeks, we stored some quiz score information there. We stored user responses there, and we stored whether or not the user successfully answered a question or passed a quiz. But now we're going to add this duration property. So all it is a child to the result object. So if you don't have anything else in here, don't worry about it. You don't need any of this stuff to add duration. It can look just like this if this is your first week adding anything related to the result object. But I'm going to leave all this stuff here for those people who have been following along. Again, this stuff isn't important this week. We're focusing on duration. So here's the thing. With the duration, we can't just include the number of seconds. We can't just include 512 if someone has been spending 512 seconds in our course, okay? We need to include the duration in a very specific format. I don't remember the exact ISO number. It's like this internationally accepted format. I think it's ISO 8601 or something like that. Long story short, we need to add another function to get this in the right format. And let me show you what it's going to be a string, okay? So it's going to be surrounded by these quotes. And here's the format that it's in. So first you need two important letters, P and T. So this basically stands for period of time. Okay, this is standard to that format. It is required. And then it's going to be the number of days or the number of hours, minutes, and seconds. So it will look like this. Say we're doing, so it'll be a period of time, 2 hours, 27 minutes, 35 seconds. Okay, so see how that's together? It's a period of time, then it's the number of hours followed by an H, the number of minutes followed by an M, and the number of seconds followed by an S. So you don't need to remember, you need to remember that as when it comes to actually making sense of these strings. But I wrote a function that will convert the number of seconds into this string. And this is something I'm just going to copy and paste for you. I can briefly walk you through it, but you don't need to know how to build this function from scratch because I already did it. So save yourself some time. So I'm going to copy this here. And where we're going to paste this function is after this, after we send this statement. Because the cool thing about the JavaScript runtime environment is before it executes any of your code, it's going to look through your code and see which variables you're defining and which functions you're defining. So even though we're going to define a function down here, we can use that function earlier in our code. Okay? So that's more advanced. You don't need to worry about the JavaScript runtime environment. Just know we're adding this function inside of this send statement function, and we're going to be able to use it, this convert to ISO function, earlier in our code. So I'm going to paste this function here. Hopefully it lets me paste the whole thing. It looks like it did. Oh, no, it didn't. That's going to be tricky. Okay, so you need to kind of copy and paste that in two goes. The formatting might get a little wonky. I'm sorry for that. Another place you can copy it from is from this tutorial. And some of you might want to open up that tutorial and bookmark it, because if we're moving too fast, this text tutorial explains everything in detail. It has all of the code we're using. It's going to be a really valuable resource if you can't follow all of this right now. Very briefly, I'm going to walk you through what this function is doing. So maybe everyone look over in this window if you wanna see this. So we're naming our function convert to ISO. I named it that because it's this ISO 8601 format that we need for this duration variable. So we're passing it one argument, and the argument is going to be the seconds variable that we want to convert. So remember, it can be either course or slide, right? So let's see. So let seconds equal the seconds variable that we're passing in. So we would pass the actual name of the seconds variable. So we would pass in either course seconds or slide seconds, okay? So we pass that in. If that seconds variable is greater than 60, then we know that we're going to need to break it down into minutes and maybe even hours, okay? So we're using an if statement. So notice here, if it's less than 60, it says else. We're just going to add PT, and then we're going to get the value of that seconds variable. This is just like a shorthand way of doing that. And then we're going to add an S at the end. So that's really simple. If the seconds variable is equal to 47, it's going to be, this is going to return PT 47S, and that's going to work with this. That's in the right format, and it will be accepted by the Learning Record Store. And so if it's greater than 60, then it's going to check and see, okay, well, is it greater than 3600? Because that's how many seconds there are in an hour. And if it is, it does some fancy code stuff. It rounds down, it divides it by 3600 and rounds down to see how many hours it is. And then it breaks that down into minutes. Again, we don't need to get super far into it. Just try to copy and paste this. Add it right before the closing bracket to the send statement function. And now you're just going to be able to use this function however you want. Convert to ISO with the name of the seconds variable. So that brings us to the final piece of this code. We need to tell our xAPI statement which seconds variable to send with the xAPI statement. So we need to be able to tell it whether we want to pass that course seconds or that slide seconds variable. Because right now our interval is keeping track of both of them, and we have variables associated with both of them. So the way I'm going to do that, let me see here. Okay, we're going to add some new code. And it's going to be inside of our function. So let's look at our code and look at where we're setting this conf object. And we're changing the config. We're going to add some code after that. So right before we start defining the statement object, that's where we're defining the code. So first, we're going to create this new variable, final duration. We're not going to set it to equal to anything. It's just going to be a placeholder for right now. Again, you can add a semicolon after it. You don't need to. This final duration value is what we're going to include in our xAPI statement. So now that we've defined that, I think a good time to let's just replace this placeholder with final duration. So again, that variable that we just created is going to eventually hold the full string that we want to include with this, in the right spot in the xAPI statement. Is everyone with me on that? So just, make sure the duration key is set to the final duration value. And then we'll scroll back up and let's actually make this do something. So right now, final duration is not equal to anything. So we're going to say if the timer, okay. So back up 1 second. Obviously, the only way we can tell our function whether we want to include the course timer or the slide timer is with a parameter / argument. So, you've seen us do this many times. We tell the function which verb to use, which verb ID, object description, object ID, activity type, which user response variable we want to collect. We tell it whether or not the user answered the question successfully. Well, now we're also going to tell it which timer we're using. So it's okay if you only did the first 3 tutorials and you don't have any of this other stuff. This is what your code would look like. All you need to do is add a comma after the last parameter and then add this timer parameter. And when we execute the code, we're going to pass in a string that's either course or slide. And that's how we're telling our function which one of these variables to report. Okay? I'm going to undo that because we do have all this other stuff if you've been here every session. The important one here is timer. Make sure you have your comma. Make sure timer is before the closing parenthesis for these parameters. And now we're able to use that in our code. So we're just setting up an if statement. So we're saying if timer is equal to course, and again, we can use 3 equal signs, but then we need to make sure that when we pass in course, it's lowercase. I'm just going to use 2 equal signs. It's not a big deal. So if timer is equal to course, then we're going to set final duration equal to convert to ISO. We're going to use that function. And then we're going to pass it the course seconds variable. Okay? Because again, the course seconds is what's holding the number of course seconds. You know, how long someone has spent on the course. It's going to pass that into that function that I created. Oh, I'm missing a T here. Convert to ISO. So it's going to pass that number of course seconds, and it's going to return that ISO 8601 formatted string that will be accepted by our xAPI statement. So again, when we execute this code from Storyline, we're going to say, give us the course timer. Final duration is going to be, take those course seconds, run it through this function down here that I copied and pasted for you. And then that output is going to be included right here where we have this placeholder. Is everyone on board with that? And I'll show you how we do it for we're going to do the same thing for the other one. If the timer is equal to slide, then we're going to set final duration equal to convert to ISO slide seconds. And we're getting these variables from up here where we defined these variables, variable course seconds, variable slide seconds. These are what are getting added to when these timers are active. So we covered a lot of logic. We covered some new principles with these anonymous functions, these these if statements, this interval, a lot of new stuff, jumping around a lot with the logic. It is all laid out in this tutorial, right, that I pasted for you, how to measure duration. It goes through all of it. From here, we're going to actually use that in Storyline. So if you scroll towards the bottom here, I think all of this code is laid out. Yeah, here's your final xAPI statement code should look like this. It's all laid out at the bottom of this URL. It doesn't have the stuff from the previous tutorials. It's only basically if you did the first 3 and then jump to this one, that's what that final code is. Chat has been very quiet. I hope that means you all have been following along, or maybe you're still trying to wrap your head around it fully, but this should work. So I want to go ahead and I want to try this in Storyline now. So speak now, or we're moving on. All right, let's give this a try. I mean, again, I added a lot of stuff. Hopefully I didn't mess anything up too bad. Hopefully it works the first try, but let's hop into Storyline. So right now on the first page of our Storyline file, we need to start our code, right? We need to start executing things. Or maybe we don't want to start our course until the user has entered their name and email, okay? Let's say that's the angle we're going to take. So let me add this. I've never had this trigger on this button to jump to the next slide, so I finally added that. Okay, so on this slide, this is going to be on the slide where you want to start your course timer. We're going to create a new trigger. The action will be execute JavaScript. Okay, and then we're going to do that when the timeline starts. The timeline starts on this slide. So as soon as the user dives into the actual course, that's when we're executing this JavaScript. And the JavaScript is going to be, like we showed earlier, manage timer.course.start. Okay? So what that's doing is that's going to access this, this nice manage timer object we have. And it's going to execute this function. So it's going to set this isCourseTimer variable active, isCourseTimer active variable to true, and it's going to start incrementing those seconds. So far, so good. Great. And likewise, because we're going to want to know how long they spend on this individual question, I'm going to create, I'm going to do manage timer.slide.start because I want to start that slide timer too. because we want to know how long they spend on question 1, not just the whole course. So I'll paste this. This is what I'm executing on this first question slide. Okay. So we'll press OK here. And now let's hop over to question. So I'm going to copy this execute JavaScript trigger because we're going to want to do something very similar on question 2. So I'm going to paste that execute JavaScript trigger on slide 2. And now this time we don't want to start the course timer. And the slide timer has already started, so we don't want to start it again. But what we do want to do is reset it. So manage timer.slide.reset. So now once they get to question 2, that timer is going to be kicked back down to 0, and it's going to already start going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because we're not stopping it. So we don't need to start it again. All we need to do is reset it. So on this second slide, this is the only code I'm using. So I hope you're seeing, like now that we have this code set up, this is all we have to do to manage our timer. It's super simple. So same thing, I'm going to copy that code. I'm going to paste it on question 3. So again, we're just resetting the slide timer again when they get to question 3. And that's all I need to do. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now let me show you. So now we need to add those arguments so that we can tell our xAPI statement which duration to track. So let's go back to question 1. Let's look at this JavaScript that's getting executed when the user selects choice A. So again, yours might be different. You might not have this storyline file set up like this. What you really need to make sure is that in your send statement function, you're passing all of these arguments for everything you have. And whenever you get to the timer one, we need to add that on here. So I'm going to add a comma after this last argument, and I'm going to add slide. Again, because right here we have some code saying, is timer equal to course or is timer equal to slide? So we're telling it we want to capture the slide time when the user answers one of these choices. So I'm going to do the same thing and make sure it's in quotes as a string, and it's before this closing parenthesis. Don't forget the comma after the argument before it. So I'm just going to do the same thing now for all of these choices. So that's choice A, B, and C. And we'll do the same thing with the view cheat sheet. Why not? We want to know how long someone spends on the slide before they view the cheat sheet. So same thing here. So question 2, I'm just going to quickly go ahead and do this on all of these. You can feel free to do it on one or all. If you don't add anything here, it might break your code. So we do want to make sure we're passing this correct argument. I have one more question to handle this on. Bear with me. Okay, it has been added. And now, once we get to the results screen, we want to know how long someone spent on the course as a whole. So we're already executing some xAPI statements. We're sending it from this pass layer and this fail layer. So first we'll go to the pass layer, and sure enough, we'll add as the last argument to this function, we're going to pass course as the string this time. Because we don't want to know how long they spent on the results slide. We want to know how long they spent on the whole course. So I'm going to press OK. And I'm going to do the same thing with the JavaScript we're executing on the fail layer. So you see how we did that. Every time we execute our code, we tell it whether we want the course timer or the slide timer. And if you understand this code, if you look at this and see how we're managing this, here with these variables, you can set up multiple different timers. You can set up a resource timer. You can set up an interaction timer. So right now we just have course and slide, but you can keep going more and more granular to even have multiple timers starting and stopping on a single slide, if that makes sense. So that's that. I've added the code. I'm going to go ahead and publish this now, and we're going to see if we can get this working. So as usual, I'm going to publish it to the desktop. I'm going to name it measure duration, since we're moving right along here. Feel free to ask questions if you have any while I'm doing this. Just like we've done in the previous sessions, I'm going to open this story.html file with code. You can open it with your code editor. So I'm going to save this xAPI statement.javascript file we've been working on, and then I'm going to save as and save it in this new output folder. So I'm just going to navigate to that folder I just published and press save. So sure enough, that file is in here now. That's what we want. I'm going to go to a previous course that I published from last week, and I'm going to get this xAPI wrapper.min.js file. I'm going to go back to the new published output folder and paste this. And same thing for the script tags. I'm just going to go into this, this storyline output that we published last week. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to get these script tags. Paste them here as always. If you need that xAPI wrapper file, just let me know. I'll tell you how to get it. I think everyone here is pretty familiar with that so far. But we want to paste those script tags right above the closing body tag in our new story file from our published output. So this is the story file we want to open with code, and we want to make sure we add these two script tags right above the body tag that looks like this. I'll paste that in the chat too. You're looking for that at the bottom, and you're adding these script tags right above it. Make sure you save. That's very important. Once you have those two files in your published output and you've added those script tags to the story.html file, we're ready to test this out. So I'm going to open it up. We're going to bring it over here. We're going to say my name is Devlin Duration, devlinpeck@gmail.com. Submit. Okay, so right now my course timer and my slide timer should have fired, and I'll show you how we can check that. We'll go to the console, and now I'll just type in the name of the variable. So let's type in course seconds. And sure enough, we can see it right there. So we can access JavaScript variables in the console just by typing them. Slide seconds, it's 20 now. So we know that's working, and this is useful for troubleshooting. Again, F12 to get to the console. So let's start doing some answers now. So we'll do choice B. What is the correct color? The correct color is red. What is the correct number? We'll say 17. Oh no, I failed. I didn't get the correct color, I think. So let's look over to the Learning Records store. Again, I use Veracity LRS, so I go to lrs.io. I'm going to select this Crowdcast Learning Records store that I've been using. And then once you're in here, on the left-hand side, we go to xAPI data and statements. And here we go. We definitely have some statements from Devlin Duration. Let's open this failed statement and see if the duration is included. Here we go. Duration, PT, period of time, 37 seconds. Okay, so it took us 37 seconds to complete the whole quiz. Let's look at question 1. Question 1 took us 30 seconds. So we just cruised through those other ones. And as always, we can add this to our stream here. I'm going to go ahead and configure this. I'm going to turn off the stored property. It looks like duration is not a preset option here. So I'm just going to do a custom field. I'm going to add a path. So, let's see. So choose path. Oh, wait. Okay, here we go. So with this add field option, I'm going to press where it says choose path. We know that our duration property is a child of the result object. So I'm going to press result, and then we'll select duration. And now I'll press add field. And here we go. Now we have this beautiful duration data. We can see that the user spent 30 seconds on question 1, 4 seconds on question 2, 3 seconds on question 3, and a whopping 37 seconds on the entire quiz. So this kind of data is super valuable to get an idea of how people are actually engaging with your courses. Are they giving it the time of day? Are they getting stuck in certain places? Where are they struggling? What are the outliers looking like? So that's a wrap. This was the most code-heavy session by far. My personal favorite, kind of data we can get with xAPI. It's definitely not something people do with SCORM. So yeah, I'm happy to hear what you all think. I kind of cruised through it a bit because I do have to hop off in 9 minutes or so, but I'm here to answer questions.